Yes, and our first speaker is Elizabeth Sackler, and she's the founder of Elizabeth Sackler Center for Feminist Art at Brooklyn Museum. That has been, since it was started in 2007, a center for feminist art, activism and theory, and a really, really nice place to be. I visited myself. The name of the lecture will be New Forms, the World in a Different Order. Please welcome Elizabeth Sackler.
I'm the short side here, so I need to make, excuse me, sure that you can hear me and that the microphone's in the right place. So, I'd like to thank, of course, Lisa and Elizabeth and Christian and the sponsors of this wonderful symposium. I think it's a historic symposium for you, and perhaps I was invited here and with the idea that I would begin my remarks with a call to rally, such as my paper that was entitled A Call to Arms, and for the New York Art Academy I did The Radicalization of Normal People. And in both cases I just dove right in, straight and cold, to uncharted and charted territories. I'd like to have the next slide. This is, of course, our world in a different order. This is a cartoon from the New Yorker. And actually, originally, it was two men. And I am the one who added the curls and the dress. And for those of you who can't see it, it says on the bottom, paper or plastic. Now, I consider that this cartoon is an example of my thinking, and perhaps yours, about women's choices. Our necks await the inevitable guillotine, while our given choices of paper or plastic camouflage our lack of freedom and choice. We deny our situation as surely as we deny our death. So today I am going to go slowly for you, for me. Since those earlier papers, I have spent a very long time ruminating, thinking about purpose, the meaning of all, the meaning of everything, the meaning of nothing, the meaning of creativity, the meaning of equality, the meaning of justice. In short, I consider all of those to be the meaning of life. And I don't know the reason for life. I don't know that I understand the meaning of life. But I believe in all of this ruminating that I have found the purpose for life. We do what we do because we are compelled. We do what we do because we are born or we exist to create, to make something out of nothing. As we come into the world from energy formed into matter, so we have in our cellular makeup an addiction to create new matter, new forms of life, whether it's human or clay, whether it's built, sculpted, painted, blown, written, composed, performed, you name it. Creation is a new form, and there is new form in creation. As I look back, if I had known the obstacles before me of an idea or of a vision, of the work, of the horror and the frustration, I might not have begun at all. Having begun and completed a couple of pieces of really good work, I can say that I am glad that I did not stop and think. I'm glad that I didn't second guess my instinct. I didn't question whether or not something was a good idea, because intuitively I knew it was an essential idea. one must remove one's head from the block of the guillotine and the inevitable blade to save our lives, to save the meaning of our lives. So how much of life is essential? At this point, I think not much. We need air, we need water, we have heartbeats. They're requisites for our body. I do believe that creation is a requisite of the soul. Birds fly south in winter, monarch butterflies. I don't know if you have that here, monarch butterflies in our part of the world. In the Western Hemisphere, they migrate thousands and thousands of miles down to, from Canada down to Mexico, and only half of them, I think there are 5 million they've counted, who's counted, have fly down. About half of them return, but for them it is an essential journey for their life cycle. And if it weren't, I suspect that the butterflies and the birds would not migrate. So I received this invitation, an invitation to inspire perhaps, or perhaps to cheer you on, or perhaps to draw a map, to address you, and I believe you're creators all. I have understood, and we talked about it the other night, that you may be frustrated by a myopic culture, a schizophrenic culture, a hypocritical culture. And you're Norwegian women celebrating, I understand, your centenary of suffrage, but I understand that parity is parsed here. It's underscored, and suffrage, whether it's earned or it's taken, has been granted in one place, and apparently has been refused in another, or blocked, or obstacles have been created for you. And it is my understanding that the inequities that you experience as artists are out of alignment, at least as what we think of as your social, political, and cultural equality in all matters. In the United States of America, we do have a dream and a fantasy, I've come to realize, that you have a culture and a society of incredible equality. I have heard here from Norwegian women that it is by law, not necessarily by social or cultural norms. So I think that seems to be one of the pieces that this symposium is seeking to address and to look at. And indeed, as you well know, it's only been in the last 100 years that women have really been able to paint openly. You've had the right. Well, I'm here to urge you, I hope inspire you, and I hope I'll give you a model of a way. But I must remind you something very important that I say all the time when I speak globally in all nation states, whether it's the first or the third or the fourth. We live under the thumb of patriarchal model, of a hierarchy of political power, of fiscal power, of military power, and power of the marketplace, power of the sex trade, of the arms trade, and if not all or some of those, we certainly live under the power of the stock market and of the art market. And of the art market, I can say only that I grieve that model. Art has been, I believe, subsumed within it. So I ask the questions. As a commodity, does it not crush creativity for the young? As a question, I ask, does the art market not embitter the mature that have worked without recognition or payment due? And I asked whether or not it takes the juice of the pure passion, fruit, and dilute it into an ice cream covered carcinogenic fake cupcake. Well, yes. But there are those who are immune, who are unencumbered or blissfully oblivious. The artist. Indifferent because it is the creation and the expression that motivates and is all that really matters. The big news in New York City 2 weeks ago was, in the newspapers, was that Christie's was hailed by the press as having broken all historic records for the sale of post-war and contemporary art. In fact, they did a lot better than the Impressionist and Post-Impressionist and modern. And I don't know whether or not you got that news here, but nearly $500 million, I don't know what that is in krona, but was spent to purchase art. There were $50 million apiece for Jackson Pollock, $50 million for Basquiat, $50 million for Liechtenstein. Of the 72 lots up for sale in the evening auction, which is of course considered to be the important auction, 43 were men and 5 were women. A Joan Mitchell sold for $5.5 million, Agnes Martin for $3.2 million, Marlene Dumas, magnificent Reinhardt's daughter, for only $1.2 million, and the Jusama for $900,000, and the Cindy Sherman for $600,000. This is a disparity, an enormous disparity. It's so large, you can't even really call it disparity. Hedge fund money has now entered the art market, and what that will do to the art market, I don't know. But I suspect we are going into waters that are as yet untried and untested. And I think we may have new problems arising in the ways in which this is going to affect artists, galleries, and of course, museums. Holland Carter, for those of you who do not know, is one of the wonderful critics of the New York Times, and I say wonderful because I call him my angel cutter. And I call him my angel cutter because he has loved the Sackler Center for Feminist Art since it first opened. He has loved the dinner party, and he has been a very important voice for us. And that's a very important thing, to have the press, to have the critics, as well as the museums lobbying. So he wrote an article in the New York Times, and it was actually at the time that the Edward Munch sold for what was it, $120 million? You probably heard about that. And he wrote the following. It was headlined, he headlined his article, or somebody did, "If I had the cash, I wouldn't buy that." Now, I will tell you, this is no offense, and I will tell you what he says about it at the end. But he was reporting on that auction record of $119 million, and it was on May 3rd of 2012, so that's a year ago, and I quote, "If I focused on modern and contemporary, I know where I'd spend," Holland Carter said. He wrote, "My museum," as if he's imagining in his mind that he would have museum funds, "would focus on, for starters, work produced by women internationally over the past 50 years. Some of the artists I'm thinking about call or call themselves feminists, though many don't or didn't. A huge percentage of current art comes right out of their work. Together, it would be more than a collection. It would be a force. And given the low interest in and the low prices of such art, I could probably pick most of the artwork straight up from the studios and estates, no Sotheby's commissions, thank you very much, and touch only a small fraction of my $120 million museum fund." In saying that, he not only spoke truth, but he also was encouraging people to take a look at what is available. I think there is much to be discussed about the pricing of art, but I will continue for the moment. He says, and this I say about the Edward Munch so that you don't take offense to his saying he wouldn't have bought that. He says, "Of course I will never start a museum or apart from an art or end an art collection." He said, "Personally, I love ideas as much as objects, not that I can separate them. I feel ideas are sensuous. What I collect are experiences," he writes, "traveling, seeing, being there, anywhere. For me, the screen will always mean the memory of a moody Oslo twilight. from decades ago. The value of that experience, for me, is beyond price. When I hear 120 million, I think of how many experiences for how many people that might have bought. So the Contemporary Day Sale, moving along, had 183 male artists, 118 living, and 34 female artists, 24 living. And the low for the male artist was $8,000, for the female $12,000 for a Canadian, for Candida Hoffer. The high for the male was 2.2, and for the female was a Louise Bourgeois that went for 1.6. And at the end of the day, this auction day of the morning and the afternoon lasted 8.5 hours. And everybody was exhausted. They went through 4 auctioneers, and there were more women artists, significantly more women artists in the day auction than in the night auction, nowhere near parity. The male artists, however, for the most part, were not as well known as the female artists, and they fetched double the prices of the well-known female artists. So a total of $900 million was spent in 2 days. So my question comes to you, it comes to me, for what kind of parity, for what parity does the female artist strive? I say female artists. What kind of parity do artists strive for? Clearly, one is of the material world. We strive for equal appraisal. We strive for fetching equitable prices in auction houses and galleries. And another, of course, is for wall space. My own mantra is equal pay, equal wall space. Critics, of course, we want them to acknowledge the import of our work. But you are not abandoning your art when faced with the inequities of the art market. The critic or the museum, clearly this invitation to speak to you was to call an art to sisterhood, to solidarity, to movement, and to change. And this weekend, I am understanding that you have said no. How can it be that we have the right to vote, but we are ignored as artists at worst and accepted in some ways at best? So this next slide, please, I think is what has moved me and has held me strong over the last, well, certainly over the last 10, if not 20 years. Strength, tenacity, strategy, perseverance, and solidarity. And these are no small matters. These are no easy things to keep, but they're essential. They're absolutely essential. I think in hearing Judy Chicago speak yesterday, we heard all of those things in her voice, in her speech, in her life. I am the granddaughter of Jewish Orthodox grandparents who left Poland and Austro-Hungary and Denmark. I learned Yais Gedat when I was very little, but that was just about all. To make a new life in New York City, I'm the daughter of a very brilliant mother, a genius father. I myself am the grandmother of 3. I'm the daughter of, the granddaughter of the mother of 2. And I actually say I'm the mother of 3. I'm the mother of Laura, who's 39, and the mother of Michael, who's 29. And I'm the mother of the Elizabeth Sackler Center for Feminist Art, who is age 6. This is the front of the museum. That's our banner on the left. It says Elizabeth Sackler Center for Feminist Art. Global Feminisms was our first exhibition. So this is the front of the Brooklyn Museum the week of our opening. And there's much to say about the center, obviously, and there are lots of points of view about it, about its beginnings, its formations, its process, its growth, its effectiveness, its meaning to New York City, cultural landscape, and the bar that it has raised in the United States and around the world. So I'd like to say something upon which you can build. Since patriarchy controls all the aspects of our lives and the institutions in which we've grown up and those that have grown up around us, it is imperative for us to infiltrate those institutions. The Sackler Center for Feminist Art is a different institutional model. It is interdisciplinary, it is intergenerational, and all things relevant to women, all things have a home, both wall space and in voice. A journalist asked me when we opened 6 years ago whether or not it was a conflict or an irony to institutionalize feminist art. And I said, the idea isn't to institutionalize feminist art. The idea is to feminize the institution. And let's go to the next photograph. Of course, we ordered around the beautiful, wonderful, important dinner party by Judy Chicago. And this monumental work is situated in the dinner party gallery, as it has come to be called. And of course, as you probably know, there are 39 women represented on the plates of the 3 wings, each millennial, first, second, third. There are 990 names inscribed on the floor representing women in Western history. And it is the fulcrum of the Sackler Center. And the dinner party has really exhumed. Judy has really brought us these women, these 1,038 women, and brought them into a dialogue with the 21st century and the lives of the women who come to the center and their children. And in an encyclopedic museum like the Brooklyn Museum, the fact of the center, the announcement of the Sackler Center for Feminist Art within the museum, the day that it was announced within the museum that we had reached an agreement, it changed immediately the museum culture. Immediately. We hadn't opened for 2 years. And all of a sudden, curators were going back and saying, oh my goodness, well, what do we have in storerooms that we haven't put out? And automatically, things started showing up on the walls. Women's work, focuses on women, feminist content and other work began to appear. We have, I went in because I thought this is so wonderful. Judy and her wonderful research crew. We have 7 women, Norwegian women. Let's take a look at them. And they're under these are under the first wing. Is Freda and Hel and the gnomes. Excuse my pronunciation. So this is in the first wing. Next one, please. And I'm sure this is under Susan B. Anthony. As many of you may know, the dinner party is chronologically ordered, and the women who are on the floor are of the same generation, of the same time period as the women above them. Sonia Hennig. Of course, my grandmother, who was Danish, was a great ice skater, so I learned about Sonia Hennig when I was very little. Next, please. And this was very exciting to me, actually, to find out that Sigrid Undstedt is on your 500 kroner. We don't have a woman on a bill in the United States. You got 2. That is no small matter. It means your young girls, your children, your daughters, are seeing the faces of women on the money, on the currency that they use, that you use. And this is a very important piece. Heritage panels. Part of the dinner party are the heritage panels, which really have the chronology, again, under the dinner party plates, which are on the top there, and then the women who are listed on the floor has information. And we put together, in addition, a computer-generated information center so that you can click on the names, and all of this information, which was so hard to come by when Judy was putting the dinner party together, is now filled up. In fact, you can go up online and you will find all of that is available. And let's go to the next slide. I'd like to show you, these were actually doodles, if you will, by our wonderful architects, Susie Rodriguez. And she was trying to figure out how in the space, and I don't know what the equivalent is, of 8,300 square feet, it's very small, but how she was going to put in what the agreement was that I had with the Brooklyn Museum. I said to the Brooklyn Museum, we have to have a place for the dinner party. We need a herstory gallery, which Judy and I called the Girls Gallery, which has become the herstory gallery instead of the Girls Gallery, but we stripped at that. Anyway, and we have exhibitions there that relate to the dinner party, and then we have we have another feminist space for changing exhibitions. You'll see photographs of all of them. And then a space for panel discussions and lectures. So she was fiddling around with this, and it will give you an idea. The reason I put this up is so that you can see the dinner party is central, but the space around it is all used. So let's take a look at that if we could. And you'll begin to see how fantastic and important a designer is within the museum and how this space changes. So this is one of the outside spaces. This was the opening. Next slide, please. And this was a remix. So instead, the opening exhibition took up 2 full, very, very large galleries. So the next exhibition was smaller, and we pulled it all into the center itself. Next, please. This was a solo show by Gada Emir. It was quite beautiful. This is the other side. This is the other side of it, looking in the other direction. Go ahead, please. This is a beautiful Hannah bouquet, of course, rosebud. And this was building a feminist art collection. Next, please. And the walls were put up. The walls are taken down. You can see there's a Okay, next please. This was a video installation. So the entire space was changed. Next please. And of course we had, this was Eva Hesse, this is going, I'm running on the line. This was designed by Judy Chicago, this award. And I figured, oh, we have to do something wonderful for our 5th anniversary, and decided we're going to honor women who were first in their fields, all fields. So all fields means all fields. And here are the first awards. Here are the women. Some of them you know, some of them you don't. And Toni Morrison, Jessie Norman, Susan Stroman, Faye Waddleton, she was the first woman who was head of the Planned Parenthood in the United States. Of course, you know Lucy Locard, I'm sure, and Linda Naka. Let's look at the photograph. So these are the first. And there's Linda in the yellow there, Linda Naka. Next to her, standing there, is Toni Morrison. And the place was full, packed. Couldn't have gotten more packed. And it's online if you're interested in seeing it. All right, so let's continue. This is happening next month. So we're honoring Julie Taymor, who you may know from the Lion, who designed the Lion King. Next, please. This is the award. This is now in the forum where I showed you where we have panel discussions, where we have an awards forum. Next, please. Okay, so here we are. What you need or what I use. Let's begin. Pop them down. A magnet. Well, I had the dinner party. I was very lucky. As I've said to Judy, without the dinner party in Judy Chicago, there wouldn't be an Elizabeth Sackler Center for Feminist Art. So you have to think about that. Do you need a magnet? If so, what kind of magnet? Do you need a draw? Do you need people who are going to be saying, oh no, this is that we have to see this, we've got to see that. Judy and I knew one another for a decade before this came to pass. The timing was perfect. Then you need groundbreaking ideas. I think you're loaded with those. You need a place, preferably an institution, because it's institutional change that you're after. Then you need a bargaining tool. I will give you my secret. My bargaining tool was my name.
in the United States as well as in Europe. There are Sackler wings and things, as I like to call what my father and uncles have done. And as I often said to my sister, the boys gave us a great launching pad, the boys being the three brothers. And the museum wanted very much to have a Sackler gallery. And I said, no. You can have the Elizabeth A. Sackler Center for Feminist Art. They said, okay. They had no idea. But they were a committed partner. The museum emptied out huge spaces. That their costume, they had a huge costume collection, which they ended up gifting actually to the Metropolitan Museum to make space for the center, and that was a huge commitment. So we broke ground. Then, of course, you need funders or a funder, but funders is always a good idea. But you know, I don't put it at the beginning because it doesn't start and end with money. And I think that's something that you really need to think about. What it may start and end with are the following: vigilance, insistence, constancy. The first year that that center opened, I was there every weekend introducing the panelists. Every weekend. Because the museum didn't think it was important to have panel discussions. And they soon discovered how very, very vital it is to keeping the place alive. And then, of course, this publicity, which we've had wonderful publicity, word of mouth, and of course now I'm happy to say that the Guggenheim and MoMA and the Whitney are all moving to catch up to us because they don't have the dinner party and they don't have the Sackler Center for Feminist Art, and because they really are patriarchally and hierarchically committed, will never be able to do what we do. And I told Catherine Morris, who is our current curator, when she came on, that her mission was to keep us ahead. We began ahead, and we are going to stay ahead. Because once you start falling behind, you lose traction. You need appreciation and adoration. We have it all over the place. And you need proof. Right. The proof is that the museum says, as they keep track of things, 1/3 of the visitorship comes to the Sackler Center for Feminist Art. That's proof. You need rootedness, and the next slide, please, are outcomes, and I'll run through them quickly because I'm running out of time. But in a new creation, you have an institution commits to permanent groundbreaking change. At the moment of that commitment, as I described, you will have morphing. And inspiration creates external change. People wonder, why hasn't that been done before? That's when you know you really hit the jackpot, is when people don't know, and it begins to become a force. Then there's a revelation, a reveal, confronts denials, inequities, or the inequities become so apparent they cannot be denied. This is really important. But this doesn't mean that everything will change. It sets the stage and shows the possibility and desirability for, as I titled this paper, new forms for the world in a different order. And then you need to be insistent. You have to be vigilant. And it's a slippery slope. People get sloppy, sometimes don't get it, people get lazy, they look for all kinds of reasons to stop and do other, and then you need constancy. You need absolute constancy. So I began my thinking for this paper with the sentence that you read in the brochure, maybe or not: our proclivity as humans to live in denial and the requisite revolution required for survival. And that is true for women. It is true for women, it is true for women in the arts. And if we are going to be a civil society with men and women in parity, in equality, with options, with opportunities, we can't turn away from the injustices we see. So if your injustices are social, or political, or cultural, even if you have the laws, you have to engage, and you have to care, and you have to focus, and you have to do it all with clarity. And I've been told that I was courageous, and to tell you the truth, it never occurred to me that I was courageous. I wasn't. I simply did what had to be done. And I think you can do the same. So thank you very much.
I don't know whether or not we have time for a couple of questions.
Yes, I'm free.
So yes.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
My name is Heidi Sackler. I'm an artist.
You have to speak louder because my ears are not as great as
My
these.
name is Heidi Sackler. I'm an artist living here in Oslo. I just want to say thank you very much for this talk. Very inspiring. I have no question. I just have this thing coming to me now. There's a few people which should really definitely have been here today, which is not here, present, because they are in Bergen or they are somewhere else important, and in institutions here in Oslo, because they're now going to build a new national museum, and there are also other institutions which have women in top positions, and I think this is so inspiring, and I think they would really get very inspired by this. So I'm very sad.
You have the opportunity to inspire them.
But I think you are. And so I'm thinking, I mean, they are somewhere else. Sad for them. This is great.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate that very much, and I thank you for that. And I would just point out that that's part of what I was meaning here in looking at all of these pieces. You have the idea, you have the strength, you have the solidarity, and your voices need to be heard. Yes.
Thank you very much for the lesson. I have just one question. You mentioned hedge funds in the beginning of your speech. Could you explain that to us? What that will mean to the art market?
I don't know what it will mean. That's sort of what I was saying.
What is it?
Oh, what is it? All right. Well, what's happened in the United States in the last decade is that, and actually there's a lawyer who said, well, if you know anybody who has a whole lot of money, they didn't make it legally because there are enough laws in this country that you can't have a whole lot of money. But in any event, there are hedge fund managers. They're part of the stock market. They're offshoots of Wall Street and have become Wall Street. And they invest money for people and make money for people, but while they're making money for people, they're making a lot of money for themselves. There are young people in their 40s who are walking away with $200 and $300 million a year. And what happened with the stock market crash in the United States, well, it wasn't a crash, but the big dip in 2008, is that people got nervous. Stock market people got nervous, Wall Street people got nervous about investing in the stock market. So they started to look around and said, wow, what can we invest in that gives a good return? Well, the art market. And so what's happening now is people with enormous amounts of money, that's why I was going with the $50 million for Jackson Pollock has never been paid before. $50 million for Basquiat has never been paid for. So these are people who have money to spare. For them, it's like for us maybe $50 or $500 or maybe $5,000, but it's not so much money. And that is going to skew, as it has the rest of the United States. It's going to skew the art market. How that's going to land and what is going to happen as a result of that, I don't know, but I think it is very dangerous. One of the reasons that I went from that and want to talk about creativity is because one must not leave creativity behind. because you think a painting isn't going to sell for $50 million. You've got to keep making your art. You've got to be creative. Yes?
Okay, one more question. One more question.
Yeah, I have a question. I was wondering, you mentioned that you wanted, or that Brooklyn Museum is an encyclopedia museum. And I'm wondering what that means and how a museum, what it was before, and what's the difference between a museum who is going that way and in another way.
Well, sometimes in Europe it's called not only encyclopedic, sometimes it's called universal museum in Europe. Another example is the British Museum. So the Brooklyn Museum has always been an encyclopedic museum, and what it means is it actually has the greatest Egyptian art collection of any museum in the United States. Most people at this point don't know that. It has a fabulous Asian department. It has a great department of the arts of the Americas. So all areas are represented going back in history, going back to Mesopotamia. And it means that in a museum that has been dedicated to the arts of the world from all time, the opening of a center for feminist art was particularly important. Feminist art is being recognized as Asian art is being recognized, it's being recognized as contemporary art is being recognized, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, that's what I meant. Okay, thank you very much.